January 1942. Rain-soaked training ground, Aldershot, southern England. Temperature 3 degrees Celsius. Thomas Blackwell, 37 years old, Canadian weapons engineer, stared at the captured Panzer III. 14 penetration attempts scarred its grey-painted hull. 0 successes against frontal armour. Behind him lay casualty reports from France, May 1940. 147 Commonwealth anti-tank rifle crews killed or missing. The boy's rifle implicated in 89 deaths. This weapon was supposed to stop German armour. It had failed, catastrophically. In occupied France, Hauptmann Heinrich Vogel's 116th Panzer Division had collected 127 abandoned boys' rifles from overrun positions. His report to Wehrmacht High Command read, "Dangerous at close range against light armour. Misemployed by enemy infantry. British War Office wanted cancellation." Canada had committed £890,000 sterling to produce 6,500 units at John Inglis and Company, Toronto. What happened next forced German intelligence to issue 17 urgent tactical revisions, and proved the deadliest weapon is not always the one that looks strongest. The rain came harder now. Thomas stood behind a low earth berm, hands shoved deep in his coat pockets, watching 2 soldiers wrestle the massive rifle into position. The weapon was longer than a man, 16 kilograms fully loaded. A slab-sided magazine jutted from the left side like a growth. The bipod legs dug into mud that would not hold. This was the 4th demonstration of the day, each one the same. Load the 5-round magazine, settle behind the awkward shoulder pad, aim at the Panzer's front plate, fire. Watch the rounds spark off armour that was supposed to crack. The gunner this morning was a corporal from Halifax, 22 years old. He had that look they all had now, the one that said he knew this rifle would not save him when the real shooting started. Thomas had seen that look before. Dunkirk, June 1940. His colleague Hugh Dermott, 41, brilliant engineer, had insisted on field testing the boys under combat conditions. Hugh believed in verification, in data collected where it mattered. He took a rifle to France with the British Expeditionary Force, attached himself to an anti-tank platoon, and sent back notes in careful handwriting about performance under stress. The last note arrived June 3rd. Short, clipped sentences, nothing like Hugh's usual thoroughness. Rifle performs to specification. Penetration adequate against light vehicles. Crews report severe recoil trauma. Morale impact significant. Germans not deploying light vehicles in decisive roles. We are shooting at the wrong targets. 2 days later, Hugh was dead, killed during the evacuation. The details were vague. Enemy action, the telegram said. But Thomas knew. Hugh had been operating a boy's rifle against advancing panzers because that was what the doctrine demanded, and doctrine had sent him into a fight his weapon could not win. Thomas pulled his hand from his pocket, rubbed his face. The rain was cold enough to hurt. The corporal fired. The rifle's muzzle brake hurled flame and smoke. The recoil slammed him backward, despite the bipod. Far down range, the Panzer's front armour rang like a bell. A bright scar appeared. No penetration. The armour held. Thomas turned away before the corporal could see his face. Across the training ground, in a wooden hut that smelled of wet wool and cigarette smoke, Major Robert Ashford studied a map of France that no longer mattered. The red lines marking British positions had been erased. German occupation zones covered everything in grey. Ashford was 45, career officer. He had been a captain in France, watched his anti-tank platoons get shredded trying to stop panzers with rifles that might as well have been throwing stones. He remembered their faces. Boys barely old enough to shave, crouched behind weapons they believed would save them, pulling triggers and watching rounds bounce. He had given the orders. Hold this road, stop that tank, use your anti-tank rifles. That is what they are for. 43 men under his command. 19 came home. The door opened. Rain blew in. Thomas Blackwell entered, water streaming from his coat. Ashford did not look up from the map. How many failures today, Blackwell? 14 attempts against frontal armor, 0 penetrations. And yet we keep testing. We keep testing because Canada has already invested $1.2 million and issued rifles to 2,300 soldiers. If we cancel now, we send those men into combat with nothing. Ashford finally looked up. His eyes were the color of winter sea. Better nothing than a weapon that gives false confidence. False confidence killed half my men. Thomas set his briefcase on the table, opened it, pulled out a folder thick with reports. The rifle is not the problem, Major. The rifle failed in France. The doctrine failed. The rifle performed exactly to specification. Ashford's jaw tightened. My men performed to specification. They aimed where they were told, fired when ordered. The rifle did not penetrate because you ordered them to fire at 30mm frontal armor with a round designed to penetrate 21mm. That is not a rifle failure. That is a command failure. The silence in the room changed texture, became sharp. Ashford stood slowly. You are saying I killed my own men? Thomas met his gaze, held it. I am saying the doctrine killed them. We told them this rifle would stop panzers. It will not. It was never designed to. But we sent them anyway because admitting limitations felt like surrender. And what would you have me tell them now? That the weapon they carry is useless? I would have you tell them the truth. This rifle will not stop a Panzer III frontally, but it will destroy a scout car at 180 meters. It will immobilize a half-track. It will punch through the side armor of vehicles that give German columns their eyes and mobility. Tell them to shoot what they can kill, not what looks most dangerous. Ashford turned back to the map. His finger traced a road in northern France. I had a sergeant, good man, steady. He told me the night before we engaged that the boys would not work against the tanks we were facing. I told him orders were orders. He died trying to follow them. Thomas said nothing. Ashford's voice dropped. How many soldiers have been retrained on your new doctrine? None yet. The doctrine does not officially exist. How many could you retrain? All of them, if you authorize it. Ashford stared at the map for another 30 seconds. Then he closed the folder, turned to face Thomas. You have 3 months. Prove it works. If you cannot, I recommend immediate cancellation. Understood. And Blackwell, if you are wrong, you will carry every death that follows. Thomas picked up his briefcase. I already do, Major. The rain had stopped by evening, but the cold remained. Thomas walked the perimeter of the training ground alone, boots squelching in mud, watching the last light fade behind clouds that looked like bruises. His mind kept returning to Hugh's last note. We are shooting at the wrong targets. Hugh had been right. The data proved it. German casualty reports, captured in France and analyzed by British intelligence, showed boys' rifle effectiveness was not 0. It was selective. SDKFZ-222 scout cars, destroyed. SDKFZ-231 armored cars, penetrated. Half-tracks, mobility killed. Unarmored vehicles, catastrophic damage. The pattern was clear. The rifle worked, when aimed at appropriate targets. But doctrine had demanded they aim at panzers, at frontal armor, at targets the weapon had no hope of defeating. And men had died, believing their weapon had betrayed them, when in truth, their commanders had. Thomas stopped walking. Ahead, the captured panzer sat in the gathering dark like a memorial. He thought about Alberta, 1920s, before engineering school, before the war, when he was just a young man with a rifle, hunting elk in the Rockies with his father. His father had taught him patience, how to wait for the right angle, how to read an animal's movement, how to understand that a bull elk's chest, thick with muscle and bone, was not the target, the lungs from the side, the rear quarters to break mobility, the neck if you had the skill, and the animal stood still. You do not kill what looks strongest, his father had said. You kill what keeps it alive. Thomas looked at the panzer, thought about what kept an armored column alive. Not the tanks themselves. The tanks were the muscle, the visible threat. But they were blind without reconnaissance, slow without supply trucks, vulnerable when their supporting vehicles were destroyed and they had to advance alone into prepared defenses. Kill the scouts. Block the road. Force the panzers to operate without eyes. The rifle could do that, if anyone would let it. 300 miles away, in a converted farmhouse outside Calais, Hauptmann Heinrich Vogel sat at a desk stacked with reports and tried to make sense of what British infantry had been attempting with their anti-tank rifles. Vogel was 33, former history teacher from Heidelberg. He had never intended to become a soldier, but 1939 had rearranged many lives, and he had discovered a talent for reconnaissance work that surprised him. He was methodical, careful. He kept detailed notes because history, he believed, was made of details. The report in front of him documented an engagement from May 28, 1940. His unit, then a reconnaissance company, had been probing British positions near Dunkirk. They had advanced with 2 SDKFZ 222 scout cars in the lead, followed by half-tracks carrying infantry. At approximately 700 hours, the lead scout car had been hit by anti-tank rifle fire, 1 round through the side armor. The vehicle had caught fire, 3 crew members killed. The second scout car stopped to provide suppressive fire, exposing itself, and took 2 more hits, both penetrations, 1 crew wounded. The half-tracks had reversed. The advance stalled for 47 minutes while they cleared the disabled vehicles and treated casualties. The British position was eventually overrun. Vogel's infantry found 4 bodies and 3 abandoned boys' rifles. Massive weapons, brutal-looking. The British had withdrawn without them, which suggested either panic or a belief that the rifles were not worth carrying. Vogel had ordered the rifles collected, tagged, sent to Kummersdorf testing facility with a note. "These weapons killed 6 of my men. I need to know their capabilities." The Kummersdorf report arrived in August. Technical, precise. The boys' anti-tank rifle could penetrate 14 to 18 millimeters of armor at close range. Effective against German reconnaissance vehicles. Marginally effective against light tank side armor. Completely ineffective against Panzer III and IV frontal plates. The conclusion was clear. The British had been using the weapon incorrectly. Aiming at heavy targets it could not defeat. Ignoring light targets it would destroy. Vogel had written this in his report. British employment doctrine appears flawed. Weapon dangerous when used correctly. Recommend caution in reconnaissance operations. No one had paid much attention. The British were defeated. Their rifles were trophies. The war moved east, and Vogel's warnings were filed away with thousands of other observations that seemed irrelevant once victory was achieved. But now, January 1942, sitting in this cold farmhouse, Vogel found himself thinking about those rifles again. Because intelligence was reporting something strange. Canada was producing them, thousands of them, and instead of cancelling a failed weapon, they were expanding production. Vogel tapped his pen against the desk, stared at the map of British positions across the Channel. Why would a rational military double down on a weapon that had failed so spectacularly? Unless they had learned something from that failure, unless they were not making the same mistakes twice. Vogel made a note in his journal. Small, easy to miss among the daily observations, but it was there. January 17, 1942. Canadian boys' rifle production continues. Query: have they changed employment doctrine? He underlined the word doctrine twice. Thomas returned to Toronto in February. The city was buried under snow. Wind came off Lake Ontario like it had a personal grudge. The John Inglis factory sat on Strachan Avenue, a massive brick building that had been making washing machines before the war and now made weapons with the same precision. The engineering office was on the 3rd floor, windows overlooking the production line, the smell of machine oil and hot metal. Thomas spread blueprints across a table and assembled his team. 7 engineers, men who understood metallurgy, ballistics, stress tolerances, men who could look at a weapon that had failed and see not a catastrophe, but a puzzle with missing pieces. Thomas pointed to the boy's rifle schematic. "Gentlemen, our problem is not the weapon. It is how the weapon has been employed. We are going to fix that, not by changing the rifle, by changing what we tell men to shoot." The oldest engineer, Patterson, 56, looked skeptical. The British already tried that. They wrote manuals, trained crews. The rifle still failed. The British told crews to engage tanks, any tanks, all tanks. The manuals show neat diagrams of Panzer weak spots and suggest that a well-placed shot might penetrate. That is fantasy. We are going to teach reality. Thomas pulled out photographs, captured German vehicles, scout cars, armored cars, half-tracks. These are our targets, not the panzers. These, the vehicles that move ahead of the main column, the ones that report Allied positions, the ones that carry supplies and troops. We kill these, the panzers become blind and slow. Another engineer, Morrison, frowned. That is not anti-tank doctrine, that is anti-vehicle. Correct, which is what this rifle actually is. We have been calling it the wrong name and using it for the wrong job. Patterson leaned forward. And you think the brass will accept that? Accept that the weapon they invested £1 million in cannot do what they promised? Major Ashford already has. He lost half his command in France following the old doctrine. He will support a new one if we can prove it works. How do we prove it? Thomas smiled. It did not reach his eyes. We build a training program. We show them exactly what this rifle can kill. We put numbers to it. Penetration at specific ranges against specific armor. No ambiguity, no optimism. Cold facts. And then we find soldiers who understand those facts and can execute them. The engineers looked at each other. Patterson finally nodded. When do we start? Now. We have 3 months to redesign doctrine, build a training program, and produce evidence that this approach works. If we fail, the program gets cancelled and 2,300 Canadian soldiers go into combat with nothing. Morrison picked up the blueprint, studied it. What are we changing on the rifle itself? The muzzle brake, make it more efficient, reduce recoil by 30% if possible. The bipod, reinforce it, increase load capacity. And we are developing improved armor-piercing rounds, tungsten carbide cores, 5 more millimeters of penetration. 5 millimeters will not defeat a panzer. It will punch through the side of a scout car like paper. That is all we need. 600 miles east, in a prisoner-of-war camp near Sheffield, a German officer named Lieutenant Weber sat across from a British intelligence officer and tried to explain why his captors had lost so badly in France. The interrogation had been going on for 3 hours. Weber was tired, hungry. His English was decent but not fluent, and the effort of translating his thoughts into words the British could understand was exhausting. The intelligence officer, a major whose name Weber had not caught, tapped a photograph. This weapon, the boy's anti-tank rifle, your assessment. Weber studied the photo. He had seen these rifles before. Dunkirk. Abandoned by the roadside, stuck in ditches, left behind when British soldiers ran. Your men used them wrong, Weber said. The major's expression did not change. Explain. They shot at tanks, front armor, from bad angles. The rounds bounced. We kept advancing. Your men believed the weapon had failed them. And it had not? Weber shook his head. The weapon worked. When it hit correct targets, I saw it destroy a scout car. 1 shot, side armor, fire, 3 dead. Another time it hit our half-track, running gear destroyed, vehicle blocking road. We lost 34 minutes clearing it. That is effective. But not against panzers. No, not front armor. Maybe side, close range if lucky. But this is wrong question. The major leaned forward. What is the right question? Why shoot panzers? They are strong, protected. Shooting strong target with weak weapon is stupid. Shoot weak targets, scout cars, supply trucks, communications vehicles. This rifle kills those easily. We feared it when used correctly. The major made notes. Why did we not use it correctly? Weber considered. Pride, maybe. You wanted weapon to kill biggest threat. Big weapon should kill big target. This is natural thinking, but wrong. Soldier with knife does not attack elephant. He cuts rope holding elephant. Elephant trapped, soldier wins. The major stopped writing, looked at Weber for a long moment. You are saying we should have targeted your support vehicles, not your armor. Yes, you kill our eyes, our supplies, our mobility. Our tanks are useless, strong but useless, like elephant without food. And if we had done that? Weber smiled without humor. France would have been much harder for us, maybe different ending. The major closed his notebook, stood. Thank you, Lieutenant. You have been very helpful. Weber watched him leave, wondered if the British would actually learn, or if pride would keep them shooting at elephants. March 1942, Petawawa, Ontario. The Canadian Army training facility spread across hundreds of acres of pine forest and frozen lakes. The cold here was different from England, drier, sharper. It cut through clothing like wire. Thomas stood in a warehouse that had been converted into a classroom. 40 soldiers sat on benches, breath misting in the unheated space, watching him with expressions ranging from skepticism to hostility. These were the men who would test the new doctrine. Veterans, most of them. Some had been in France. Some had trained with the boys' rifle and learned to hate it. All of them knew the weapon's reputation. Thomas did not start with pleasantries. The boys' anti-tank rifle, he said, cannot penetrate the frontal armor of a Panzer III or Panzer IV. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying or ignorant. This weapon will not save you if a tank charges your position head-on. The room was silent. A few soldiers exchanged glances. One man in the back, older, maybe 35, nodded slowly. Thomas continued, "What this rifle will do is destroy German reconnaissance vehicles at ranges up to 200 meters. It will immobilize half-tracks. It will kill supply trucks. It will give you the ability to blind and cripple German columns before their tanks ever reach you." He pulled down a screen. Projected photographs. German vehicles. SDKFZ, 222 scout cars with thin armor. SDKFZ, 251 half-tracks carrying infantry. Opel trucks, loaded with ammunition. These are your targets, not panzers. These, the vehicles that make an armored advance possible. You kill these, the panzers become isolated, slow, vulnerable. That is your job, not heroically stopping tanks. Professionally dismantling the system that supports them. A soldier raised his hand, young, maybe 21. "Sir, if we are not stopping tanks, what are we?" "Anti-vehicle specialists. You are going to make it impossible for German columns to move without constant casualties to their support elements. You are going to force them to deploy heavy infantry screens, slow their reconnaissance, disrupt their logistics. You are going to change how they fight." Another hand, the older soldier in the back. "And when a tank does come at us, you let the anti-tank guns handle it, or you disengage. There is no shame in not fighting a battle you cannot win. Dying bravely with an inappropriate weapon is not courage, it is waste." That got reactions, some nods, some frowns, a few looks that said this went against everything they had been taught. Thomas let the silence stretch. Then he said, "Show of hands. How many of you knew someone who died in France operating a boy's rifle?" 13 hands went up. The doctrine that sent them to die told them they could stop panzers. It lied. I will not lie to you. This rifle has limitations, but within those limitations, it is extremely effective. Your job is to learn those limitations and operate accordingly. Questions? The room erupted. One soldier did not ask questions. He sat in the front row, arms crossed, face expressionless. His name was Lorne Mackay, 23 years old, farm boy from Manitoba. He had joined up in 1939, spent 2 years training, and missed France by 3 weeks. His brother had not missed it. Fraser Mackay, 25, Royal Canadian Regiment, landed in France January 1940, killed May 28, 1940, operating a boy's rifle against advancing German armor near Dunkirk. Lorne had received the telegram in June. "Your brother gave his life for his country, died with honor." The telegram did not mention that Fraser had been shooting at targets he could not kill, following orders he knew were suicide, because doctrine said this was how you fought tanks. It did not mention that Fraser had written a letter the night before he died, a letter that arrived in Manitoba 3 weeks after the telegram, a letter Lorne carried in his breast pocket and had read so many times the paper was soft as cloth. The letter said, "Tommy, if you are reading this, I did not make it. I want you to know it was not the rifle's fault. The rifle works. I have seen it destroy scout cars, half-tracks, trucks. But they keep ordering us to fire at panzers. Front armor. It does not penetrate. We all know it does not penetrate, but orders are orders. If I die tomorrow, it will not be because the weapon failed. It will be because someone sent me to fight the wrong battle with the right tool. Tell Mom I love her. Take care of the farm. Do not make my mistake." Lorne had made a decision the day he read that letter. If he ever got near a boy's rifle, he would learn to use it correctly. He would not die following stupid orders. He would make Fraser's death mean something. Now, sitting in this freezing warehouse, listening to this engineer from Toronto talk about limitations and appropriate targets and professional dismantling, Lorne felt something he had not felt since his brother died: hope. After the lecture, Thomas walked among the soldiers, answering questions, clarifying points. He noticed Lorne standing apart, waiting. Thomas approached. "You did not ask any questions." "Did not need to." Lorne's voice was flat, Manitoba accent, economical with words. "You disagree with something I said?" "No, you are right. About all of it." "You sound certain." Lorne pulled the letter from his pocket, held it out. "My brother wrote this, night before he died. France." Thomas took the letter, read it slowly. When he finished, he looked at Lorne with different eyes. "Your brother understood," Thomas said quietly. "He understood. Did not save him. He followed orders anyway." "I am sorry." "Sorry does not help." Lorne took the letter back, folded it carefully. "What helps is making sure no one else dies like Fraser did. You can do that?" "I am trying." "Trying is not good enough." Thomas felt the weight of that. "You are right. I need proof, evidence that this doctrine works. I need soldiers who can demonstrate it." Lorne met his eyes. "I am a mechanic. Farm equipment. When a tractor breaks down, I do not hit it with a hammer. I find what is wrong, fix that specific thing. Germans are machines. Find the part that breaks. Break it." Thomas felt something shift in his understanding. "You see vehicles as systems. Everything is a system. Kill the right part, whole machine stops. Can you shoot? Well enough. The new doctrine needs demonstration, training footage, someone who understands systems and can execute under pressure. Would you be interested?" Lorne was quiet for 10 seconds. Then, "Will it save lives?" "If it works, yes." "Then I am interested." They shook hands. Thomas felt the calluses. Working hands. Hands that understood tools and machines and how things broke. "One condition," Lorne said. "If this fails, if the rifle still does not work, you tell them to cancel it. No more lies. No more sending people out with weapons that cannot do the job." "Agreed." "And you put Fraser's name in the manual. He figured this out. He deserves credit." Thomas nodded. "I will make sure he is remembered." Lorne walked away. Thomas stood in the cold warehouse, holding a letter from a dead soldier, and thought about the responsibility he was carrying. If he was wrong, if the new doctrine failed, more men would die. More brothers would not come home. He could not be wrong. April 1942. The testing began in earnest. The Canadian Army had arranged for a captured SDKFZ-222 to be shipped from North Africa. British forces had disabled it during fighting in Tunisia, and it had been sitting in a depot, waiting for someone to decide its fate. Now it sat on a range in Petawawa, grey paint faded, armour pocked with old damage, about to serve a new purpose. Lorne stood behind the boy's rifle, bipod deployed, 5-round magazine loaded. The rifle weighed 36 pounds, 63.5 inches long. It felt like holding a piece of artillery. Thomas stood 20 yards behind, with stopwatch and notebook. Camera crew positioned to document everything. This would be the footage they showed to skeptics, the evidence that the doctrine worked. "Range 80 meters, Thomas called. "Target, side armor, aim for engine compartment." Lawns settled behind the weapon. The improved shoulder pad Thomas's team had designed distributed the recoil better than the original, but this would still hurt. He checked his breathing, exhaled slowly, placed the crosshairs on a seam in the armor where engine access panels met hull, squeezed the trigger. The rifle fired with a crack that echoed across the frozen lake. Muzzle brake vented gases sideways, kicking up snow. Recoil hammered into Lawns' shoulder, but the improved bipod held. Downrange, the round hit exactly where he had aimed. Penetration. The armor-piercing round punched through 14 millimeters of side plate like it was tin. Inside the empty vehicle, it would have torn through fuel lines, oil reservoirs, engine components. Had this been combat, the scout car would have died. Lawn worked the bolt, ejected the spent casing, loaded the next round, aimed higher, fired again. This one hit the turret ring. Deflection. The round sparked off at an angle. Not every shot would penetrate. That was fine. That was data. Third shot. Lower. Running gear. The round hit the front wheel assembly. Metal shattered. The tire collapsed. Mobility kill. Vehicle would not move, even if the engine survived. Fourth shot. Rear quarter. Another penetration. Fuel tank area. Fire hazard. Fifth shot. Driver's visor. The armored glass cracked but held. Close enough to mission kill the crew through shock if nothing else. Thomas wrote furiously. 5 shots, 3 penetrations, 1 mobility kill, 1 deflection, range 80 meters. Time, 47 seconds from first to last shot. They moved closer, 50 meters. Repeated the test. 6 shots this time, 5 penetrations. The scout car was perforated. They moved to 120 meters. Longer range, harder shot. 4 penetrations out of 5, still effective. By the end of the day, they had fired 63 rounds at various ranges and angles. The scout car looked like it had been through an actual battle. The resistance came from exactly where Thomas expected. Senior officers who had written the original doctrine, men who had trained hundreds of soldiers on the old methods, men who would have to admit they had been wrong. The meeting happened in Ottawa, May 1942, a conference room in the Department of National Defense building, windows overlooking the Rideau Canal. 12 officers around a table. Thomas at the head with his briefcase full of evidence. He did not waste time with preambles. He showed them the footage, Lawn destroying the scout car, numbers and data projected on the wall, penetration rates, effectiveness percentages, casualty projections comparing old doctrine to new. When the footage ended, silence filled the room. A brigadier, grey-haired, medals from the last war, spoke first. "Mr. Blackwell, are you telling this assembly that we should train our anti-tank crews not to engage tanks? I am telling you that the boy's rifle cannot reliably penetrate modern German tank armor. Pretending otherwise kills soldiers. And what do we tell Parliament? That we spent over $1 million on a weapon that cannot do what we promised. You tell them we spent $1 million on a weapon that can cripple German reconnaissance and logistics, which is exactly what we need. Tanks without scouts are blind. Tanks without supplies are stationary. Our job is not to destroy every panzer. Our job is to make it impossible for panzers to operate effectively." Another officer. "The Germans will adapt. They will screen their reconnaissance, provide more protection." Yes, which means they commit more resources to protecting their scouts, more infantry, more heavy vehicles in support roles, which slows them down and ties up assets they would otherwise use offensively. That is victory. We force them to change their tactics because ours are working. The brigadier looked at his colleagues. Some nodded, some frowned. One colonel, younger than the rest, raised his hand. "I was in France. I lost 16 men from my company operating boys' rifles. 16. They believed the weapon would save them. It did not. If you are telling me there was a way to use that rifle that would have kept them alive, and we simply did not know it." His voice broke. He stopped, breathed. "If that is true, I need to know." I need to know we learned something from their deaths." Thomas looked at him. "Your men did not die because the rifle failed. They died because the doctrine was wrong. We have corrected the doctrine. It will not bring them back, but it will save the next 16. The colonel nodded once, looked away. The vote was not unanimous, but it was enough. The new doctrine was approved for implementation. Training would begin June 1942. All Canadian boys' rifle crews would be retrained on the new methods by September. Thomas walked out of the building into Ottawa spring sunshine and felt the weight settle deeper. He had won. The doctrine would change. But now he owned every life that depended on it. If he was wrong, the deaths would be his. May 15, 1942. A package arrived at Wehrmacht intelligence headquarters in Berlin. Inside, photographs of Canadian training exercises, taken by an Abwehr agent working in Montreal, showing soldiers practicing with boys' rifles against mock-up vehicles. The photographs were passed to several analysts. Most dismissed them. Training footage, nothing interesting. The British had already failed with this weapon. One analyst did not dismiss them. He was young, thorough. He noticed the targets in the photographs were scout cars and half-tracks, not tanks. He noticed the angles of fire, flanking positions, not frontal. He noticed the training seemed focused on specific vulnerable points. He wrote a memo, flagged it priority, sent it to field intelligence officers. One copy reached Hauptmann Heinrich Vogel in France. Vogel read the memo, studied the photographs, felt cold certainty settle in his chest. They had learned. The Canadians had learned. He pulled out his journal, wrote a new entry. May 20th, 1942. Intelligence confirms Canadians have redesigned boys' rifle employment doctrine. Focus on reconnaissance and support vehicles. Exactly what I warned in 1940 report. Recommend immediate tactical adjustments. Our light armor is now primary target. Expect increased casualties in reconnaissance operations. He underlined the last sentence 3 times. Then he sent the report up the chain of command and waited to see if anyone would listen. Thomas stood in the John Inglis factory, watching the production line turn out boys' rifles at a rate of 40 per week. The improved design was in full production now. Better muzzle brake, reinforced bipod, the new armor-piercing rounds coming off a separate line. His daughter Moira stood beside him, 12 years old, dark hair like her mother. Her mother who had died in 1938 from pneumonia that antibiotics might have cured if they had reached the hospital 2 hours earlier. Moira watched the rifles move down the line. "Are these going to win the war, Papa?" Thomas looked down at her. "No, but they might help save some of the men fighting it." "Is that enough?" He thought about Fraser Mackay, about Hugh Dermott, about 13 hands raised in a frozen warehouse. "It has to be. Mama would say you are doing good work. Your mother would say I should be home more." She would, but she would understand. They stood together in the noise and heat of the factory, watching tools of war being born from precision and care, and Thomas wondered if any of this would matter when history wrote its verdict. December 15th, 1942. The training program was complete. 1,847 Canadian soldiers had been retrained on the new doctrine. The training film, 17 minutes of lawn methodically destroying vehicle after vehicle, had been distributed to 47 battalions. Thomas sat in his Toronto office and compiled the final report. Success rates, penetration data, projected effectiveness, all the numbers that turned lives and deaths into acceptable margins. The phone rang. Major Ashford. "Blackwell, the brass wants a demonstration. Full War Office attendance. Can you do it?" "When?" "January. Southampton. They are bringing in German prisoners with technical expertise. Want them to assess whether the new doctrine would have worked." Thomas felt his stomach tighten. That is unusual. That is verification. If German officers who fought against the boys' rifles say the new methods are effective, no one can claim we are overselling. "Can Mackay travel?" "I will ask him." "Do not ask. Order him. This needs to be perfect." Thomas hung up, stared out the window at Toronto winter, snow falling past streetlights. The war felt very close suddenly, very real. He thought about Fraser's letter, about the responsibility of being right. In 3 weeks, they would put the new doctrine to the ultimate test. Not on a practice range, in front of the men who had fought against it. Men who would know, instantly, whether this was genuine improvement or desperate propaganda. If the Germans said it would work, the doctrine lived. If they said it would fail, everything ended. Thomas reached for the phone to call Lorne. His hand was shaking. He forced it still. This was the moment that mattered. Everything before had been preparation. Everything after would be consequence. He picked up the phone and dialed. January 1943, Southampton, England. A military facility on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by barbed wire and winter fog that rolled in from the channel like slow artillery smoke. Inside a converted gymnasium, 47 British and Canadian officers sat in folding chairs. At the front of the room, behind a table bearing witness, sat 3 German prisoners of war. Officers, technical specialists, men who had fought in France and North Africa, men who had seen boys' rifles used against them and lived to document the results. Lieutenant Weber was among them, the history teacher turned reconnaissance officer. He had spent 31 months as a prisoner. His English had improved considerably. His understanding of Allied weapons was encyclopedic now. The British interrogators had used him extensively as a consultant. He knew why he was here today. Thomas stood beside a projection screen, briefcase open, notes arranged. Lorne Mackay waited in the wings with the rifle. This was the final test, not of the weapon, of the doctrine. The senior British officer, a colonel whose name tag read Harrison, called the room to order. "Gentlemen, we are here to assess the revised employment doctrine for the boys' anti-tank rifle. The Canadians have made significant changes to training and tactical application. We have invited technical experts with combat experience against this weapon to provide objective evaluation. Proceed, Mr. Blackwell." Thomas began. No preamble, no apology. The boys' rifle failed in France because we aimed it at targets it could not defeat. We told our soldiers this weapon would stop panzers. It would not. It cannot. That doctrine killed 89 Commonwealth soldiers in documented engagements. He clicked the projector. Images appeared. French roads, abandoned positions, the casualty lists. The new doctrine acknowledges limitations. This rifle will not penetrate 30mm frontal armor. It will penetrate 14 to 18mm at close range, which makes its effective targets German reconnaissance vehicles, half-tracks, and support elements. We have retrained 1,847 soldiers on this doctrine. Today, we demonstrate why it works. He nodded to Lorne. The lights dimmed. Lorne stepped forward with the rifle. The demonstration target was a captured SDKFZ 231 armored car, 8-wheeled, 18mm of armor on the sides. Germany used hundreds of them for reconnaissance across every theater. Lorne moved with the efficiency Thomas had come to recognize. No wasted motion, each action deliberate. He deployed the bipod, loaded the magazine, settled behind the weapon like he was checking a carburetor. "Range, 100 meters, Thomas announced. "Target, side engine compartment." Lorne fired. The crack was enormous in the enclosed space, despite the ventilation. The round hit exactly where aimed. Penetration. A hole appeared in the armored car's flank that you could put 3 fingers through. He worked the bolt. Fired again. Front wheel assembly. The wheel exploded. Mobility kill. Third shot. Turret ring. The round sparked off, deflection, but the impact would have jammed the turret mechanism. Mission kill, even without penetration. Fourth shot. Rear fuel tank area. Another clean hole. In combat, fuel leaking onto a hot engine. Fire. Fifth shot. Driver's vision slit. The armored glass spiderwebbed. No penetration, but the driver would be blind, effectively dead. Lorne stood, ejected the magazine, set the rifle on safe, stepped back. The room was silent. Thomas turned to the German officers. Lieutenant Weber, in your professional assessment, would this employment method have been effective against your reconnaissance elements? Weber did not hesitate. Yes, absolutely yes. Please elaborate. Weber stood, walked to the damaged vehicle, ran his hand along the punctured armor. In France, your soldiers shot at our panzers, frontal armor. We kept advancing. We believed your rifle was ineffective. But several times this weapon hit our scout cars, our half-tracks. When it did, we lost vehicles, we lost men. We learned to fear encounters where your infantry had correct angles and correct targets. He pointed to the holes. These shots would have destroyed my vehicle in France. Engine fire, fuel leak, crew casualties. If Canadian infantry had used this doctrine in 1940, our reconnaissance would have been much more costly, much slower, maybe too slow. The second German officer, a Hauptmann named Steiner, nodded. The rifle's reputation as failure came from misuse, not from weapon deficiency. This doctrine corrects the misuse. The third German, an Oberleutnant from a panzer division, added, "If I knew Canadian or British infantry had this training, I would change how I employed my reconnaissance elements. More infantry screens, more cautious probing." Which is exactly what you want. You force us to commit more resources to protect our scouts. Colonel Harrison leaned forward. Are you saying as German officers that you consider this revised doctrine a genuine threat? Weber met his eyes. I am saying that if we face this doctrine in combat, we will take casualties, perhaps significant casualties, and we will adapt our tactics accordingly. Which means the doctrine is effective. You have made the rifle do what it actually can do, instead of what you wished it could do. That is professionalism. Harrison looked at Thomas. Mr. Blackwell, I believe you have your verification. The meeting ended 2 hours later. As officers filed out, Weber approached Thomas quietly. Mr. Blackwell, a question. Yes? The soldier who demonstrated. McKay, you said his name was. He shoots like a man who understands machines, not like a soldier. He is a farm mechanic, Manitoba. He fixes tractors. Weber nodded slowly. That explains it. He was not shooting a weapon. He was repairing a problem, finding broken parts. Very efficient. His brother died in France, operating a boy's rifle under the old doctrine. Weber's expression shifted. I am sorry. His brother fought with honor, I am certain. His brother figured out what we are teaching now, wrote it in a letter the night before he died. But he followed orders anyway. Orders. Weber looked away. Orders kill many good men, on both sides. Thomas extended his hand. Thank you for your honesty today, Lieutenant. It matters. Weber shook it. I hope your doctrine saves lives, even if some of those lives are shooting at us. That is all any of us can hope for. 6 months passed. The doctrine spread through Commonwealth forces like a correction to a mathematical error. British 8th Army adopted it, Polish 2nd Corps, Free French units training in North Africa. By June 1943, the boy's rifle had a new reputation, not as a tank killer, as something more subtle and more dangerous, a weapon that made reconnaissance expensive. German intelligence noticed. Reports filtered back to Wehrmacht headquarters. Allied anti-tank rifle employment has changed. Expect increased casualties to Aufklärung elements. Recommend tactical adjustments. Hauptmann Heinrich Vogel, now commanding a reconnaissance battalion in Sicily, received the updated guidance in late June. He read it in his command post overlooking the Mediterranean and felt vindication mixed with concern. He had warned them. May 1940. The British were using the weapon incorrectly, but it would be dangerous if they learned. Now they had learned. And his battalion, light vehicles, thin armor, operating ahead of the main force, was exactly what this new doctrine had been designed to kill. Vogel wrote in his journal, June 28, 1943, Canadians landing Sicily inevitable. Intelligence confirms. Boys' rifle doctrine now standard. My vehicle's primary targets. Must adapt reconnaissance methods. Cannot probe blindly anymore. Every approach potentially ambushed. He closed the journal, looked out at the dusty Sicilian landscape, heat shimmering off rocks, olive groves that could hide anything, roads perfect for ambush. Somewhere out there, Canadian infantry would be waiting with their rifles, waiting for his scouts to probe forward, waiting to demonstrate their new doctrine on German crews who would die learning that the Allies had finally figured out how to use their failed weapon. War, Vogel thought, was a conversation between professionals. The Canadians had learned from their mistakes. Now he had to learn from their learning. The education would be written in casualties. July 10th, 1943. Operation Husky. The invasion of Sicily. 160,000 Allied troops hit the beaches. American, British, Canadian. The largest amphibious operation yet attempted. The Italian and German defenders, undermanned, undersupplied, caught between retreat and resistance, fought with the desperation of men defending an island they knew they could not hold. The Royal Canadian Regiment landed at Pacino on the southeastern tip. C Company, 2nd Battalion. Among them, Sergeant Lorne Mackay, 23 years old, carrying a boy's rifle serial number BM-1847. The number was not random. Thomas had arranged it. 1847. The number of soldiers retrained on the new doctrine. The ones whose lives depended on this weapon working. Lorne knew the number, knew what it meant, carried it like a responsibility. The landing was chaos but not catastrophic. Italian coastal defenders surrendered quickly. The Germans fell back to prepared positions inland. By July 12th, the Canadians were pushing north toward the interior, moving through landscape that was beautiful and murderous. Olive groves, stone walls, villages perched on hills, every ridge a potential killing ground. By early August, C Company reached the area north of Gramichel, Highway 124, a narrow road winding through agricultural country. The Canadians were told to screen the advance, watch for German reconnaissance, block any probing attacks, standard orders, routine work. Except intelligence reported that German reconnaissance elements were active in the area, light vehicles, probing for Canadian positions, looking for weaknesses, the kind of targets the new doctrine had been designed for. Lorne studied the terrain with his platoon commander, Lieutenant Morrison. The highway ran through a small valley, olive groves on both sides, good concealment, limited fields of fire, but enough if you positioned correctly. Morrison was 26, veteran of training exercises, but not combat. He trusted Lorne because Lorne had destroyed more vehicles on the practice range than anyone else in the battalion. "Where would you put the rifles, Sergeant?" Lorne walked the grove. 60 yards from the road. Good sight lines to the south, where German forces were. Cover from a low stone wall that Italian farmers had built decades ago for reasons that no longer mattered. Here, 2 positions, 75 yards from the road, overlapping fields of fire. If they come up this highway, we get flank shots, side armor, engine compartments, running gear. And if they come with tanks? We let the tanks pass, wait for the scouts and support vehicles, kill those, block the road, tanks stuck, we extract. Not our job to fight panzers. Morrison nodded. Just like training. Exactly like training, except real. They dug in that night, August 3rd, temperature dropping after the brutal heat of the day. Stars overhead like holes in black fabric. The sound of distant artillery. Always artillery. The war grinding away at itself. Lorne's position was a shallow scrape behind the stone wall, not comfortable, not meant to be. His loader was Private Patrick Delaney, Irish-Canadian from Nova Scotia, 21 years old, good hands, calm under pressure. He had watched the training film 17 times and could recite the target priority list like a prayer. They did not talk much. Some soldiers needed conversation to manage stress. Lorne and Delaney were not those soldiers. They checked the rifle, loaded magazines, counted ammunition. 12 rounds per man. Should be enough. Should be. Morrison moved between positions, whispering encouragement. The platoon settled into that strange waiting state that combat veterans knew and new soldiers had to learn. Not relaxed, not tense, somewhere between. Ready, but not wound so tight you broke when the moment came. At 0200 hours, Morrison came to Lorne's position, crouched low. HQ says German reconnaissance reported in San Michele di Ganzaria, 8 kilometers south. If they probe north, they will use this road. Time? Dawn, maybe earlier. Be ready. Morrison moved on. Lorne checked his watch. 0203, perhaps 4 hours until light. He closed his eyes, slept in 15-minute intervals. Combat skill, rest when possible, stay sharp when necessary. Delaney watched the road, woke Lorne at 0530. Getting light, Sergeant. Lorne opened his eyes. The stars were fading, east showing grey. Another 30 minutes until proper dawn. Good time to move if you were German reconnaissance. Enough light to navigate, not enough for Allied observers to spot you easily. He ate a ration bar that tasted like compressed sawdust, drank water from his canteen, checked the rifle again, loaded, safe off, bipod stable, breathing steady. Fraser's letter was in his breast pocket. He did not touch it, did not need to. He knew every word, could recite it in his sleep. This is for you, brother. This one is for you. August 4th, 1943, 0631 hours. The sound came first, always the sound. Engines, mechanical growl that was different from Allied vehicles, lower-pitched, German diesel, coming from the south. Lorne raised his hand. The signal rippled through the positions. Contact. Stay hidden. Wait. The vehicles appeared at 0638. 2 SDKFZ 222 scout cars in the lead. 8-wheeled. Fast. The kind Vogel would use to probe ahead. Behind them, 3 SDKFZ 251 half-tracks. Infantry in the back. Helmets visible above the sides. Maybe 30 soldiers total. Lorne watched through the scope. The lead scout car was 70 meters away, coming closer. Commander visible in the turret, scanning left and right. Professional. Careful. That would be an officer. Someone experienced. 60 meters now. The scout cars were moving slowly, cautious. The intelligence about Canadian positions had made them nervous. Good. Nervous was what you wanted. Nervous meant they expected something, but did not know where. Lorne's breathing slowed. 14 breaths per minute. The number that kept you steady. Not excited, not scared, just present. 50 meters. The lead scout car was perfectly positioned. Side armor presented, engine compartment exposed. Fraser had called this the money shot, the angle that killed efficiently. Lorne checked Delaney. The loader had the second magazine ready. Eyes on Lorne, waiting for the signal. 45 meters. Lorne placed the crosshairs on the engine compartment, accounted for the slight movement, led the target by 6 inches, exhaled slowly. 40 meters. His finger found the trigger. The world narrowed to the sight picture. The vehicle, the weak point, the shot that had to land. He fired. 0654 hours and 18 seconds. The 0.55-inch armor-piercing round left the muzzle at 884 meters per second. Flight time, 0.11 seconds. Distance, 37 meters when impact occurred. The round hit the side armor of Vogel's scout car 3 inches below the turret ring. The armor was 18 millimeters at that point. The tungsten carbide core punched through with energy to spare. Inside the vehicle, the round severed a fuel line. Pressurized gasoline sprayed across hot metal. Fire bloomed. Vogel, standing in the turret hatch, saw the muzzle flash an instant before impact, saw the smoke, knew immediately what had happened. His mind, trained by 3 years of war, calculated vectors and positions even as he was diving out of the burning vehicle. He hit the road hard. His left arm scraped across hot metal, burned, pain like electricity. He rolled, came up shouting, "Halt! Ambush front! Dismount!" The driver and radio operator bailed out behind him, both alive, both shocked. The vehicle was burning now, black smoke rising. Vogel's second scout car, 20 meters behind the first, slammed on brakes. The commander saw the ambush, started to reverse. Too late. 0654 hours and 52 seconds. Private Delaney, loader, tapped Lorne's shoulder. Lorne shifted aim. The second rifle position, 70 meters north, fired first, Sergeant Murphy's weapon. The round hit the second scout car's front left wheel assembly. Metal shattered. The vehicle slewed sideways, stopped dead. The half-tracks behind tried to reverse. First one succeeded, backed up 20 meters, stopped to lay down suppressive fire. Second half-track was slower, heavier. The driver panicked, turned the wheel wrong. The vehicle canted sideways across the narrow road. Lorne fired his second shot at 06:55 hours and 04 seconds, aimed at the half-track's running gear. Missed. The round hit lower. Dirt. He worked the bolt. Ejected. Loaded. Breathed. Aimed again. Third shot. 06:55 hours and 18 seconds. This one hit the half-track's front axle. The vehicle lurched. Stopped. Now it was blocking the entire road. 34 German soldiers dismounted from the half-tracks. Professional. Fast. They did not panic, found cover, returned fire. But they were exposed, pinned, and their vehicles, the mobility that made reconnaissance work, were burning or immobilized. Vogel crouched behind his burning scout car. His left arm throbbed, second-degree burns from wrist to elbow. His mind was working fast, despite the pain. Calculating. 2 muzzle flashes, 70 to 80 meters north of the road. Flanking position, good concealment, professional setup. The first shot had been perfect. Not lucky, perfect. Right into the engine compartment from an angle that maximized damage. That was training. That was doctrine. His radio operator was beside him. "Sir, contact with main column. They want to know if we need support. Tell them we have encountered Canadian anti-tank rifle positions, at least 2 weapons. They are targeting reconnaissance vehicles. Advise extreme caution on this approach." The radio operator relayed. Vogel heard the response. "Panzers moving up. ETA 8 minutes. 8 minutes. An eternity in combat." Vogel looked at his disabled vehicles. 2 scout cars destroyed. 1 half-track blocking the road. The other half-tracks reversing under fire. His infantry pinned down. This was exactly what the intelligence reports had warned about. Canadian boys, rifle doctrine. Target the scouts. Block the road. Make reconnaissance expensive. He had read the reports, studied them, adapted his tactics. It had not been enough. Lorne fired his 4th shot at 06:56 hours and 33 seconds, aimed at the half-track crew compartment, visible infantry. The round punched through thin armor. Inside, men screamed. 2 casualties, maybe 3. Delaney loaded the 5th round, last one in the magazine. "Magazine change after this." "Make it count then." Lorne aimed at the burning scout car, Vogel's vehicle. A German soldier was trying to retrieve something from inside. Equipment, maybe. Radio. The shot hit the vehicle's rear quarter. Fuel tank. The fire intensified. The soldier abandoned his attempt, dove for cover. Lorne ejected the magazine. Delaney handed him the second. Lorne slammed it home. 5 more rounds. 11 total remaining. The German infantry was starting to organize. Return fire was getting accurate. Bullets snapped through the olive grove, hit the stone wall. Chips of rock sprayed. Morrison appeared, crawling, face covered in dust. "Sergeant, intelligence says German tanks 800 meters south. Moving up. We need to extract. 2 more shots, then we go. Make them fast." Lorne aimed at the half-track, still blocking the road. The driver was trying to restart it. Visible in the cab. Clear target. Shot. 6. 06:57 hours and 12 seconds. Driver's position. The armored glass spiderwebbed. The driver slumped, dead or unconscious. The half-track stayed motionless. Perfect. Road blocked. Mission accomplished. Lorne started to shift aim for shot 7. German mortar fire began. The first mortar round hit 40 meters north of Lorne's position. The second hit 20 meters closer. Third round, closer still. The German mortar crew had bracketed them. Next rounds would be on target. Morrison was shouting, "Extract! Extract now!" Murphy's position was already moving. First rifle team breaking down, running low through the grove. Smart. Lorne fired shot 7, did not aim carefully, just put it into the mass of dismounted German infantry. Suppression, make them duck. "Go!" he shouted at Delaney. Delaney grabbed the ammunition, started to move. The mortar round hit 12 meters from their position. Shrapnel screamed through the air, hot metal fragments moving faster than sound. Delaney was halfway out of the position when 3 fragments hit him. Back, neck, shoulder. He went down without sound, just collapsed. Rifle magazine scattering. Lorne dropped the rifle, scrambled to Delaney, turned him over. The wounds were bad, very bad. Blood pulsing from the neck wound. Too much blood, too fast. "Patrick, stay with me, stay with me." Delaney's eyes were open, confused. His mouth moved. No sound came out, just blood. Lorne pressed his hand against the neck wound, trying to stop the bleeding, knowing it was not enough. Knowing, but trying anyway, because what else do you do? Morrison was there, pulling at Lorne. "Sergeant, we have to go. Tank's coming. He is bleeding out. He is already gone. We stay here, we all die." Another mortar round. This one 20 meters away. The blast wave hit like a fist. Dirt and smoke and the smell of explosive. Delaney's eyes stopped moving, fixed on something Lorne could not see. The blood flow slowed, stopped. 21 years old, Nova Scotia, dead in an olive grove in Sicily, because doctrine needed demonstration and war needed casualties, and someone always paid the price. Lorne closed Delaney's eyes, grabbed the rifle, did not look back, ran low through the grove after Morrison. Behind them, German infantry was advancing. Tanks were rumbling up the road. The ambush position was being overrun. But the road was blocked. 2 vehicles burning, 1 immobilized. The German advance on this axis had stopped, for now, for today. The doctrine worked. Delaney was dead, but the doctrine worked. Lorne did not know which fact weighed more. 0738 hours, 2 kilometers north, Canadian rally point. Lorne sat with his back against an olive tree and stared at nothing. Morrison was reporting to company commander. Casualties, 1 KIA, 3 WIA. Enemy casualties, estimated 11 KIA, 19 WIA. 2 vehicles destroyed, 1 immobilized, road blocked. German advance delayed minimum 4 hours. Success, by any military metric, acceptable losses, mission accomplished. Lorne looked at his hands, Delaney's blood drying brown under his fingernails. He had tried to wipe it off. It would not come off, just smeared. He thought about Fraser's letter, the night before he died, writing about doctrine and orders and doing things right, even when you knew you would not survive. Lorne had done things right, exactly as trained. Shot 7 times, 6 hits. Destroyed or damaged 3 vehicles. Blocked the road. Professional work. And Delaney was dead anyway because combat was not training and the enemy got a vote, and sometimes doing everything right still cost everything. Someone handed him water. He drank. Tasted nothing. Someone else took the rifle. Would clean it. Prepare it for the next engagement, because there was always a next engagement. Morrison crouched beside him. "Sergeant, I am sorry about Delaney. He was good." Lorne nodded, could not speak. "You did exactly what you were supposed to do. The shots were perfect. We stopped them." Still could not speak. "Do you understand me, Mackay? You saved lives today. That road was going to be used for a German probing attack. We blocked it. The battalion has 4 more hours to prepare positions. 4 hours because you and Delaney did your job." Lorne finally found his voice. 4 hours. Patrick is dead for 4 hours. Patrick is dead because war kills people. You did not kill him. The doctrine did not kill him. The Germans did. And you made them pay for it. Morrison stood, walked away, left Lorne with his thoughts and his bloody hands and the knowledge that everything had worked exactly as designed, and a friend was dead, and both things were true simultaneously. August 5th, 1943. German Field Hospital. Vogel lay on a cot with his arm bandaged, 2nd-degree burns, painful but not crippling. He would recover. 11 of his men would not. A British intelligence officer came, Canadian accent, captain, name tag said Webster. Hauptmann Vogel, I have questions about yesterday's engagement. Vogel nodded, tired. Ask. Your unit encountered Canadian anti-tank rifle positions. What is your assessment of their effectiveness? Vogel smiled without humor. You want me to tell you if your new doctrine works? Yes. It works. Very much it works. My scout cars destroyed. Road blocked. Advance delayed 6 hours. 11 dead. 19 wounded. Professional ambush. Professional shooting. Professional doctrine. Webster made notes. You anticipated this kind of attack? Intelligence warned us. Changed Canadian training. I read the reports. Adjusted my tactics. Was not enough. Your men were better positioned, better disciplined. They let my heavy vehicles pass. Targeted exactly the vehicles I could not afford to lose. What would you change? Vogel thought. More infantry screens, slower reconnaissance, more artillery suppression before vehicle movement, except that every approach might be ambushed, which means reconnaissance becomes more expensive, slower, less effective, which is what you want. Webster looked up from his notes. You are saying we succeeded. I am saying you learned from France. We learned from France also, but you learned faster. Now we must learn from Sicily. This is how war works. Education paid in casualties. Do you consider the boys' rifle a serious threat now? I consider Canadian infantry with proper doctrine a serious threat. The rifle is just the tool. But yes, serious. Any German officer who says otherwise has not faced it. Webster finished writing. Thank you, Hauptmann. Captain, a question for you. Yes? The soldier who shot at my vehicle. First shot. Engine compartment. Perfect angle. Perfect placement. What is his name? I cannot tell you that. I am not asking to criticize. I am asking to recognize skill. He shot like a professional. I respect that. Webster hesitated. Sergeant Mackay, Canadian Infantry. Mackay, Vogel repeated it, committed it to memory. If I survive this war, I will remember that name. He killed my men, but he killed them well, with skill and doctrine and respect for his craft. That matters. Webster left. Vogel lay back, closed his eyes, thought about burning scout cars and blocked roads, and doctrine that had evolved past his ability to counter it. The Canadians had learned. That was the worst news German reconnaissance could receive, because it meant every probe would cost, every advance would bleed, and the rifle they had dismissed as failed would kill professionally and efficiently until someone developed a better answer. War, Vogel thought again, was education. The Canadians had learned their lesson. Now Germany was learning theirs. The tuition was paid in blood. Both sides. Always both sides. August 7th, 1943. Canadian Field Hospital. Lorne sat on a cot with his shoulder bandaged. Shrapnel wound. Not serious. Would heal. He would return to duty in a week. He did not want to return to duty. He wanted to go home. To Manitoba. To the farm. To work on tractors that broke in predictable ways and could be fixed with tools and patience. But the war was not done with him. A visitor arrived, Thomas Blackwell, wearing civilian clothes, observer status. He had been in Sicily for 6 days, watching, documenting, collecting data on doctrine effectiveness. He sat beside Lorne, did not speak immediately. Finally, I heard about Private Delaney. Lorne nodded. I am sorry. Everyone is sorry. Does not help. No, it does not. They sat in silence. Outside, the Mediterranean sun was brutal. Inside the tent, it was merely hot. Flies buzzed, always flies near field hospitals. Death and flies were old companions. Thomas spoke quietly. The ambush worked, exactly as designed. 2 vehicles destroyed, 1 immobilized, road blocked, German advance delayed, acceptable casualties, mission success. Patrick is dead. Yes. The doctrine killed him. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. The doctrine put him in position. The Germans killed him. Both things are true. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No, there is nothing that will make you feel better. I know. I lost my colleague in France, Hugh. He died testing this rifle because I designed it poorly and wrote doctrine that did not match reality. I carry that. You will carry Delaney. We do not get to put it down. Lorne looked at him. Then why do we keep doing it? Because the alternative is more deaths, worse deaths. We teach people to use weapons correctly, or we send them out to die like your brother did, like my colleague did, like 89 others in France. This doctrine saved lives yesterday, more lives than it cost. That does not make Delaney's death acceptable, but it makes it meaningful. Meaningful. Lorne tasted the word, found it bitter. I have written to his widow, Thomas said, told her what happened, told her Patrick did everything right, that he died because doctrine needed demonstration, and sometimes even perfect execution has costs. I do not know if that helps her. Probably does not. What did she say? She has not replied yet. Maybe she will not. I would understand that. More silence. Lorne's shoulder throbbed. The bandage was too tight. He did not adjust it. Pain was clarifying, made everything else simple. The German officer, Lorne said, the one in the lead scout car. Did he survive? Yes, Hauptmann Vogel, burns, not critical. He is a prisoner now. Intelligence interviewed him. What did he say? He said the doctrine works, that you shot professionally, that German reconnaissance will have to change tactics because Canadian infantry has learned. Lorne absorbed that. He respected it. Yes, even though you killed his men, he respected the professionalism. Does that matter? I think it does. It means this is not murder. It is war, conducted by professionals who understand what they are doing and accept the costs. Vogel knows you were doing your job. You know he was doing his, both sides paying the tuition. That is different from the slaughter in France, where men died believing lies. Lorne closed his eyes, saw Delaney's face, the confusion in his eyes as he died, 21 years old, Nova Scotia, dead in an olive grove because doctrine needed proof and war needed casualties. I do not think I can do this anymore, Lorne said. Go back out there, shoot more people, watch more friends die. You will not have to. Medical discharge. Your shoulder will not heal properly for combat duty. You will go home, or to training command. No more front line. Training command. Teaching others what you learned, what Patrick helped prove. Every soldier you train correctly is one more who might survive. One more who will use this weapon professionally instead of dying with false promises. Lorne opened his eyes. You want me to teach. I want you to save lives. This is how you do that now. Outside, the sun continued its brutal work. Inside, two men sat with the weight of doctrine and death, and decisions that rippled forward into consequences they could not control. Eventually Lorne nodded. I will teach. For Patrick, for Fraser, for the 1,847 who carry this weapon and need to know the truth. Thank you. Do not thank me, just make sure they learn. Make sure no one else dies believing lies. Thomas stood, extended his hand. Lorne shook it. Working hands, both of them. Hands that understood tools and machines and how things broke. The rifle worked, Thomas said. That is worth something. The rifle worked, Lorne agreed. Patrick died proving it. That has to be worth something. But neither of them knew what that something was, or if it was enough, or if it would matter when history wrote its final accounting of who paid what price for what small victories. They only knew the doctrine had been tested in blood and found effective, and that would have to be sufficient, because the war was not done, and more tests were coming, and somewhere other soldiers were loading rifles and preparing to demonstrate doctrine with their lives as the price of verification. The education continued, the tuition remained constant, and the lesson was written in casualties that both sides counted and neither side could escape. September 1943. The reports began arriving at Commonwealth headquarters like evidence of a correction in mathematics. Numbers that told a story the old doctrine had failed to write. British 8th Army, Italy campaign, boys' rifle engagement success rate, 67% against appropriate targets. France 1940 comparison, 4%. The difference was not the weapon. The difference was truth. German light armor casualties, Sicily and southern Italy, July through September 1943, 340% increase compared to pre-doctrine operations in North Africa. Wehrmacht reconnaissance pace, 60% slower, documented in intercepted radio traffic and prisoner interrogations. The numbers accumulated, cold, precise, each percentage point representing vehicles destroyed, soldiers killed, advances delayed. Both sides counted, both sides understood. The Canadians had learned to use their failed weapon correctly. The cost of that learning was being paid by German reconnaissance battalions across the Mediterranean theater. An American Office of Strategic Services analyst reviewing captured German documents in October wrote in his report, "Enemy now treats Allied anti-tank rifles as persistent threat requiring tactical adjustment. Commonwealth's doctrine change has forced Wehrmacht resource reallocation, significant operational impact." The analyst did not mention Patrick Delaney, or Hugh Dermott, or Fraser Mackay, or the 89 who died in France. The report dealt in strategy, not names. But the names were there, written in the foundation of those percentages. The dead who had paid tuition for lessons the living now applied. Thomas sat in his Toronto office in late September, reviewing field reports from Sicily, and tried to calculate whether the cost had been acceptable. Doctrine implementation, 1,847 soldiers retrained. Documented combat engagements, 43. Canadian casualties in those engagements, 27 wounded, 6 killed. German casualties, estimated 118 killed or wounded, 37 vehicles destroyed or disabled. By any military calculation, favorable exchange. The doctrine worked. Lives saved outnumbered lives lost. But Thomas kept thinking about the six families receiving telegrams, 6 men who had done everything correctly and died anyway because combat was statistical and someone always fell on the wrong side of percentages. He thought about Delaney, 21, Nova Scotia, dead in an olive grove, proving that the rifle could do what Thomas had promised it would do. Had that been acceptable? Thomas did not know, was not sure anyone could know. You made decisions, you accepted consequences, you carried the weight of both. His daughter Moira, now 13, found him at his desk late one evening. Rain streaking the windows, Toronto autumn cold and wet. "Papa, are you coming home?" "Soon." "You always say soon." He looked at her, saw her mother in her face, her mother who had died believing Thomas would eventually spend less time at the factory, less time with weapons, more time with family. "I'm trying to finish something important," he said. "Is it more important than me?" The question was not accusation, just curiosity. Genuine question from a 13-year-old trying to understand why her father lived at his office. Thomas had no good answer. "No, but it is important to many people, soldiers who need these weapons to work correctly." "Did you make it work?" "Yes, it works now." "Then why are you still here?" Thomas looked at the reports, the numbers, the percentages that represented men whose names he would never know, doing work that mattered in ways they might never understand. "Because it is not enough that it works," he said quietly. "I have to make sure the lesson does not get lost, that the next weapon, the next doctrine starts with truth instead of wishes." Moira sat on the edge of his desk. "Mama would say you are being stubborn." "Your mama was usually right. She would also say you did good work, that you saved people. She would be proud." Thomas felt something crack in his chest. "Thank you, sweetheart. But she would still want you to come home." "I will, I promise. When the war ends, I will be home." Moira hugged him, left. Thomas sat alone with his reports and his promises and the knowledge that some debts could never be fully paid.
November 1943.
A development that surprised no one who understood weapons. The Piat arrived in quantity. Projector, infantry, anti-tank. A brutal device that looked like it had been designed by someone who hated both the enemy and the soldier using it. Spring-loaded, shaped charge warhead, effective range under 100 meters, vicious recoil, temperamental mechanism. But it could punch through armor that the boy's rifle could not touch. Panzer IV frontal plates, Panther side armor, Tiger hatches, if you were skilled and lucky. The Piat became the new primary anti-tank weapon. The boy's rifle began its slide into secondary roles. Not obsolete, not useless, just reclassified. What it had always actually been, an anti-material weapon for targets that did not require shaped charges. By January 1944, most frontline Canadian infantry companies had replaced their boys' rifles with Piats. The big rifles went to support companies, reconnaissance units, static defenses, places where heavy machine guns and light armor were still targets, places where the doctrine Thomas and Lorne had written still applied. Some soldiers were relieved. The Piat, for all its flaws, could kill what looked most dangerous, could stop a panzer if used correctly. That psychological weight, knowing your weapon could defeat the biggest threat, mattered. Other soldiers missed the boys, missed its range, its precision, the way it could reach out and touch a target at 200 meters with accuracy that the Piat could not match. Different tools, different jobs, both necessary. Lorne, now training instructor at Petawawa, taught both weapons. The boys with the doctrine he had helped prove. The Piat with cautious respect for a weapon that could kill its user as easily as the enemy. He was 24 now, 1 year older than when Patrick Delaney died. He dreamed about that day every few weeks. The mortar rounds, the blood, the way Delaney's eyes had stopped moving. The dreams were not nightmares exactly, just memories that replayed with perfect clarity. Combat recall. Veterans knew it, learned to live with it. During the day, Lorne taught young soldiers how to use weapons that might save their lives. He was good at it, patient, precise. He did not dramatize, did not minimize, just showed them what the weapons could do, what they could not do, and how to stay alive using that knowledge. Some students asked about his experience. He told them about Sicily, about the ambush, about doing everything right and losing someone anyway. He told them because they needed to know that perfect execution did not guarantee survival, but it improved the odds, and sometimes odds were all you had. At night he wrote letters, to Delaney's widow Margaret, to Fraser's grave in the Canadian War Cemetery in France, to Thomas occasionally, reporting on training progress. He dated a nurse named Evelyn, quiet woman from Ontario. She understood that he could not talk about some things, did not push, just existed beside him while he worked through whatever he needed to work through. They would marry after the war, have 3 children, live quiet lives in Manitoba, where the land was flat and predictable and tractors still broke in ways Lorne could fix. But that was future. In 1944, there was only the war and the teaching and the nights when he woke from dreams about olive groves and blood that would not wash off. May 1945. Germany surrendered. The war in Europe ended. Allied intelligence teams swept through captured Wehrmacht facilities, documenting, cataloguing, trying to understand how Germany had fought, what had worked, what had failed. In a depot outside Munich, an American lieutenant named Harrison found something unexpected. Stacked in a corner, wrapped in oiled cloth, tagged with German inventory numbers, 37 boys' anti-tank rifles. British weapons, captured in France 1940, never discarded, used continuously for 5 years. Harrison documented the find, tracked the serial numbers, discovered that these rifles had been issued to German security battalions, fortress garrisons, anti-partisan units, used against trucks, fortifications, light Soviet armor on the Eastern Front. Anywhere a heavy, accurate rifle was more useful than a Panzerfaust. The report reached British intelligence in June. They forwarded it to Canada. Thomas received a copy in July. He read it 3 times. Then he laughed. Not humor, something harder. Vindication mixed with irony. The weapon everyone had called useless. the rifle that had failed so spectacularly in France, the tool that had needed complete doctrine redesign to be effective. The Germans had kept it, used it, found value in it for 5 years, because professionals recognized professional tools, and Germany, whatever else it was, had been professional about weapons. Thomas filed the report, made a note for his memoir. This detail mattered. This was the final proof that the rifle had never been the problem. The doctrine had been the problem. Fix the doctrine, the rifle worked. Even the enemy had known that. He wondered if Lorne had heard. Wondered if it would matter to him. Probably not. Lorne measured success in students who survived, not in captured enemy equipment reports. But Thomas found it satisfying, a small vindication. The weapon he had helped redesign had been useful enough that the enemy had used it for the entire war. Small victory, but victory nonetheless. August 15th, 1945. Japan surrendered. The war ended completely. Lorne stood in Petawawa training ground, alone, holding boy's rifle serial number BM-1847, the rifle he had carried in Sicily, the weapon that had killed German vehicles and failed to save Patrick Delaney. The war was over. He was 25. He had survived. Against odds that had killed better men. He thought about Fraser, dead at 25 in France, never saw the doctrine change, never knew that his letter had influenced how Canada trained its soldiers, never learned that his death had meant something beyond casualties reported. Lorne set the rifle down, checked it one final time, magazine empty, chamber clear, safety engaged. The weapon that had defined 3 years of his life, reduced to inert metal and wood. "We did it, brother," he said quietly. "We made it mean something." The rifle did not answer. Rifles never did. But Lorne felt lighter somehow. Like a weight he had been carrying since 1940 had finally been set down. He walked away from the range, did not look back. The war was over. He was going home. The years passed. The decades. Thomas Blackwell continued in weapons development, helped design the FNC-1 rifle that would serve Canadian forces for decades. Applied the lessons from the boys, match weapon to mission, acknowledge limitations, train for reality to every project. His work was not glamorous, not revolutionary, just solid engineering, informed by expensive education. He retired in 1965 at age 60, wrote his memoir, Honest Weapons, Engineering Truth into Doctrine. Published 1972. Small print run, mostly purchased by military historians and veterans who understood the significance of a failed weapon made useful. His daughter Moira became an engineer, worked on the CF-18 Hornet program in the 1980s, carried forward her father's approach, precision, honesty, accepting reality. Thomas died March 7, 1989, age 84, heart failure, Toronto General Hospital. His last words to Moira were, "Tell them the truth about weapons. They will respect you for it." His papers were donated to the Canadian War Museum. Collection number 19890-312. Filed among thousands of other contributions from men who had built the machinery of war and tried to make it kill efficiently, honestly, professionally. Lorne Mackay returned to Manitoba in October 1945. Married Evelyn Thornton in June 1946. Small ceremony, veterans and farmers, people who understood that some men came home carrying weight that never showed on scales. They had 3 children, Duncan, born 1947, Fraser, born 1949, named for the brother Lorne still dreamed about, Margaret, born 1952, named for Delaney's widow who had replied to Thomas's letter with grace that Lorne had never forgotten. He opened a machinery repair shop in Portage-la-Prairie, fixed tractors, combines, equipment that broke in predictable ways and could be mended with patience and proper tools. The work was satisfying, quiet, far from olive groves and mortar fire and friends who died doing everything right. He did not talk about the war, not for years. Not until 1979, when a local newspaper did a Veterans Day feature and asked him about his service. Lorne agreed to one interview, mentioned Patrick Delaney, broke down mid-sentence, could not finish. The reporter graciously ended the interview. That night, Evelyn found him in the garage, sitting beside a deactivated boy's rifle he had kept. Weapons serial, BM-1847, the rifle from Sicily. "Do you want to talk about it?" she asked. "He was 21, Lorne said. "Did everything right. Died anyway. And you carried him. For 34 years, still carrying him. Will you ever put him down?" Lorne thought about that. "No, but maybe I can share the weight." He started attending veteran meetings, not regularly, but occasionally, talked to other men who carried similar weight, found that speaking the names, Fraser, Patrick, Hugh, the 89, made them lighter somehow, not forgotten, just acknowledged. In 1971, he received a letter, postmarked Germany, return address Heidelberg. The letter was from Hauptmann Heinrich Vogel. Vogel had survived the war, captured Sicily August 1943, British prisoner until February 1946, returned to Heidelberg, American occupation zone, safer than Soviet areas where former Wehrmacht officers sometimes disappeared. He resumed teaching, history, Heidelberg Gymnasium, teaching students about the war he had fought in, trying to help them understand how ordinary men had done terrible things for reasons that seemed logical at the time. He published a book in 1967, Achtung Kanadier, a Wehrmacht officer's Mediterranean War. Small publisher, limited distribution, but honest. Vogel wrote about facing Canadians in Sicily, about the ambush on August 4th, about losing 11 men to doctrine that had evolved faster than German tactics could counter. He wrote about respect, how professional soldiers on both sides had done their jobs, how the Canadian sergeant, name unknown at the time, had shot with precision and discipline, how war was not about good and evil, but about systems and decisions and men following orders that rippled into consequences. The Canadian War Museum obtained a copy, filed it. Someone, a researcher maybe, or a veteran looking through archives, noticed the date August 4th, 1943. Noticed the description of the ambush, made connections, found Lorne's name in casualty reports, that someone passed Vogel's address to Lorne. Lorne stared at the envelope for 3 days before opening it. Inside, a letter. Careful English, formal. Sergeant Mackay, I am the officer whose vehicle you destroyed in Sicily, August 1943. I have written a book about my experiences. I wish to contact you because professional work deserves professional acknowledgement. You and your men fought with skill and honor. I lost soldiers that day, but they died to competent tactics, not to malice. That distinction matters to me. If you are willing, I would welcome correspondence. If not, I understand. Heinrich Vogel, formerly Hauptmann, 116th Panzer Division. Lorne read the letter 7 times, showed it to Evelyn. Are you going to reply? She asked. I do not know. He killed Patrick. His mortars killed Patrick. He was following orders, like you were. Does that make it acceptable? No, but it makes it understandable. Lorne thought for 2 weeks. Finally wrote back. Short letter. Acknowledged receipt. Said he would consider correspondence. Vogel replied immediately. Longer letter. Described his experience, the burns, the prisoner camp, the return to teaching, the struggle to help students understand war without glorifying it. Lorne replied. Described Patrick Delaney, the blood, the dreams, the weight of doing everything right and losing someone anyway. The correspondence continued. 27 years, 143 letters total, archived later at the Canadian War Museum and Heidelberg University. The letters were not friendship exactly, more like 2 men who had shared a traumatic experience trying to make sense of it across the gap of former enmity. They wrote about doctrine, tactics, the nature of professional soldiering, the cost of decisions made by men far from combat. They never apologized to each other. There was nothing to apologize for. They had been doing their jobs. Both had lost men. Both carried weight. The letters were simply acknowledgement of shared burden. In 1981, Vogel wrote, "I am planning to visit Canada next year. Family trip. I would like to meet you if possible, to speak face-to-face about that day, to honor our dead together perhaps. If this is too painful, I understand." Lorne showed the letter to Evelyn, to his children, asked their opinion. His son, Fraser, age 33, said, "Dad, you have been writing this man for 10 years. Maybe it is time." Lorne agreed.
August 17th, 1982, Portage la Prairie, Manitoba.
Temperature 31 degrees Celsius. Prairie heat that shimmered off pavement and made distances uncertain. Lorne stood outside his machinery shop. Age 63, grey hair, permanent stoop from years of working on tractors, still strong, still steady. A car pulled up, rental, Toronto plates. The driver was elderly, 73, moving carefully. A woman, his wife, helped him out. Heinrich Vogel. Smaller than Lorne had imagined. Thinner. The left arm showed scars, burns from 1943. 39 years healed, but never disappeared. They stood 3 meters apart. Two old men who had tried to kill each other 4 decades earlier, now facing each other in a dusty parking lot in Manitoba where nothing suggested war except the weight they both carried. Vogel spoke first. His English was better now, still accented but clear. "Sergeant Mackay. Herr Vogel. Thank you for meeting with me. You came a long way.
I needed to see the place, where you lived, where men like you come from."
Lorne nodded toward the shop. "Come inside. Too hot out here." They went inside. Evelyn had prepared coffee, set out chairs. She and Vogel's wife, Greta, introduced themselves politely and then withdrew. This conversation was not for them. Lorne and Vogel sat. The shop smelled of oil and metal and work, familiar smells, comforting. "I brought something," Vogel said. He opened a briefcase, pulled out a photograph, black and white, grainy. A burned SDKFZ 222 Scout car. Sicily, August 1943. "Your work," Vogel said, placing it on the table between them. Lorne looked at the photograph, recognized it. The first vehicle, the shot that had started everything. "I am sorry about your men," Lorne said quietly. "I am sorry about your friend, Delaney. He died well, I think." "He died doing his job. Not sure that is the same as well." "Perhaps not. But it matters that he was professional, that you were professional, that both sides did what was necessary without malice." Lorne looked up. "You think that makes it acceptable?" "No, but it makes it bearable. We were not murderers. We were soldiers. There is a difference." "Is there? We still killed people." "Yes, but we killed for doctrine, for orders, for nations, not for pleasure, not for cruelty. That distinction kept me sane in the years after. I hope it helps you as well." Lorne was quiet for long seconds. Then, "I dream about him. Delaney. Not every night anymore, but regularly. He is always 21. I am always failing to save him. I dream about my 11. Sometimes they speak, ask why I led them into that ambush. I have no good answer. You were following orders, doing reconnaissance. And you were following doctrine, executing an ambush. Neither of us had choice in the larger pattern, only in how professionally we executed our roles." More silence. The shop was hot despite the fans, both men sweating, both uncomfortable but needing this discomfort, needing to sit with each other and the weight they shared. "I built something," Lorne said finally. "Want to see it?" He led Vogel to a corner of the shop. Behind stacked parts and old equipment, mounted on the wall, a small memorial, wooden plaque, inscription, "Private Patrick Delaney, Royal Canadian Regiment, 1922 to 1943, died, proving that honest doctrine saves lives. He did everything right." Below the plaque, mounted carefully, a boy's rifle bolt, deactivated, serial number BM-1847, the rifle from Sicily. Vogel stood before the memorial, removed his hat, was silent for 30 seconds. "May I?" He gestured toward the memorial. "Yes." Vogel reached into his briefcase again, pulled out a piece of paper, unfolded it, a list. 11 names, German names, his men. Killed August 4th, 1943. He placed the list beside Delaney's plaque. They also did everything right. They also deserve remembering.
Lorne looked at the names, felt something break and heal simultaneously in his chest. They do. They stood together, two old enemies, before a shared memorial, honoring dead who had killed each other professionally and were owed recognition for that professionalism. "Your rifle," Vogel said, pointing to the bolt, "it did not win the war." "No, but it taught both our armies important lessons about honesty, about matching weapons to missions, about the cost of doctrine written in theory instead of reality. Thomas would say that is worth something." "Thomas?" "The engineer, Thomas Blackwell. He redesigned the doctrine, made it work. He died a few years ago." "I am sorry. I would have liked to meet him." "He would have liked that. He respected professionals. You would have had interesting conversations." Vogel turned from the memorial, looked at Lorne. "Do you forgive me?" Lorne thought about that. 39 years of wait, dreams, letters, this moment. "There is nothing to forgive," he said finally. "You were a soldier. I was a soldier. We did our jobs. Men died. That is war. Forgiveness suggests someone was wrong. I do not think either of us was wrong, just following doctrine that required casualties. That is generous. That is honest." They shook hands, working hands, both of them, scarred by labor and war and years of carrying weight. Vogel and his wife left that evening, drove back to Toronto, flew home to Germany. He continued teaching until retirement, continued corresponding with Lorne, writing about war and memory and the strange peace that comes from acknowledging shared burden. He died April 19th, 2001, age 92. Heidelberg, heart failure. His last words to his son were, "I met the Canadian sergeant. He understood. That mattered." Lorne continued working his shop until 1995, retired age 75, spent time with grandchildren, taught them about tractors and mechanics and how things broke and could be fixed. Never spoke much about the war, did not need to anymore. The weight was still there, but lighter, shared with men who understood. He died February 12th, 1998, age 78, Manitoba, stroke, fast, painless. His funeral instructions requested the boy's rifle bolt from his shop be placed on his casket. His children complied. The bolt rode on polished wood. Mourners saw it. Veterans understood. Younger people asked what it meant. The family explained their father had carried weight. The bolt represented that weight. He had carried it professionally. That was worth honoring. The Canadian War Museum in Ottawa holds display case 17B, climate-controlled, carefully lit. Inside, boy's anti-tank rifle, serial number BM-1847. Sergeant Lorne Mackay's rifle from Sicily, the weapon that proved doctrine mattered more than metal. Beside the rifle, a plaque reads, "This rifle was operated by Sergeant Lorne Mackay in Sicily, August 1943. It demonstrated that adaptation and honest doctrine defeat perfection and pride." Private Patrick Delaney gave his life, proving this weapon could work when doctrine matched reality. The lessons learned here influenced military doctrine for 8 decades. Below, smaller text. This rifle was also used by German forces after capture. Found in Wehrmacht Depot, May 1945. Evidence that professional tools are recognized by professionals, regardless of origin. A photograph sits beside the rifle. 2 old men, Lorne and Vogel, Manitoba, 1982, standing before a memorial.
two enemies grown old, two professionals who had survived. School groups pass the display regularly. Tour guides explain the rifle, the doctrine, the casualties. Most students find it boring. Just another old weapon, just another war story. But occasionally someone stops, reads carefully, understands that this is not about the rifle. This is about how people learn, how doctrine evolves, how honesty costs less than pride, even when the immediate price seems higher. Those people, the ones who understand, they are why the display exists. Not to glorify war, to teach the lesson that carries forward. Today, 2024, military forces worldwide teach anti-material doctrine descended directly from what Canada developed for the boy's rifle. Do not attack the enemy's strongest asset. Attack the systems supporting that asset. Logistics, communications, reconnaissance. Kill the infrastructure. The strong asset becomes irrelevant. Cyber warfare follows the same principle. Modern hackers do not attack tanks. They attack the GPS networks guiding tanks, the supply chain provisioning them, the communications systems coordinating them. Disable the support structure, the weapons cannot function. The lesson learned on a Sicilian road 81 years ago applies to conflicts fought with keyboards and networks. The technology changed, the principle remained. Find what the enemy cannot function without. Take that away. Force adaptation. Win through precision instead of force. This is the legacy of a failed weapon made useful, not in the weapon itself, in the thinking that salvaged it, in the honesty that acknowledged limitations, in the professionalism that matched tool to task, instead of wishing the task would match the tool.
Fraser Mackay died May 28, 1940, age 25, Dunkirk, operating a boy's rifle under doctrine that did not match reality. He wrote a letter the night before explaining the problem. That letter changed everything. Patrick Delaney died August 4, 1943, age 21, Sicily, operating a boy's rifle under doctrine that matched reality perfectly. He proved the weapon worked when used honestly. That proof saved lives for 2 years of war. Hugh Dermott died June 1940, age 41, France, testing a weapon designed to specification but employed beyond capability. His observations informed the doctrine change that saved others. Thomas Blackwell died March 7, 1989, age 84, Toronto. Having spent 44 years teaching that weapons must match missions and doctrine must match reality, his work influenced military engineering for decades. Lorne Mackay died February 12, 1998, age 78, Manitoba. Having taught hundreds of soldiers how to use weapons honestly and survive professionally, his students carried his lessons into conflicts he never saw. Heinrich Vogel died April 19, 2001, age 92, Heidelberg. Having taught thousands of students that war is not simple, enemies are not monsters, and professional respect crosses battle lines, his book remains required reading in some military history courses. These are the names that matter. These are the men who paid for the lesson, or taught the lesson, or proved the lesson. The weapon was just metal and wood. The doctrine was just words. The men were what mattered. They were professionals. They did their jobs. They paid costs and accepted consequences, and taught those who followed that honesty, even expensive honesty, beats wishful thinking. That lesson is worth remembering, worth honoring, worth teaching to each generation that picks up weapons and wonders whether the cost of truth is worth paying. The answer, written in 81 years of doctrine and blood and old men shaking hands before memorials, is yes. The cost of truth is always worth paying, because the alternative, lies that kill soldiers and fail anyway, costs more. This is the legacy of the rifle no one believed in. Not that it worked. That honest people made it work by accepting what it could not do and using it for what it could. That is professionalism. That is doctrine. That is the lesson 81 years old and still relevant. The rifle is in a museum. The men are in graves. The lesson lives.
And that, finally, is enough.